Right, so our next part for this week is selection tools, assignment number 15. And before I get to showing you the assignment, I want to show you these selection tools. Whoops. So we've spoken before about how in Illustrator everything is segmented. You can go into the layers panel and each layer has an individual listing of all the different things. Even if you group things together, you can go into a group, you can see each individual brushstroke. But because we are dealing with a bitmap, which means individual pixels that you see there, selecting things in Photoshop is much, much different. And these top 6 tools, or at least the top set of tools, depending on the setting you're in, all have to do with selection. So the top one is the Move tool, and it'll just move the whole layer or whatever you have selected. So it's not going to separate the cat from anything. We have to do that manually if we want different sections. And just real quick, the Eyedropper tool will select colors. So it'll select the color of whatever pixel you're on. And then underneath it is a whole lot of other color sample tools. Mostly you'll just need the eyedropper. So now, oh, and this one right here is the crop tool. It is literally exactly what you think it is. It's just for cropping an image. Without changing, it'll take away those pixels, but it won't change the distribution of them. So if you use the crop tool, let me go back here. Right, I'm taking away almost 500 pixels from the horizontal resolution, but it's still going to be however many pixels per inch it was already set to. So it's not going to, add in more pixels or anything like that. All right, but second from the top is called the rectangular marquee tool. And there's also several others types of marquee tools, but the general idea is that you do this. And if you do that, you create a box and you move it where you want. Then you have to switch to the Move tool and it'll let you do this. Now, if you have items that are already separated out and you're dealing with multiple layers, then maybe that will work. But for one singular image, not so good, with an exception. And I'm going to teach you a hotkey right now that you're going to want to remember, and it's called Control D. And when you hit that, what it does is it deselects whatever is selected. So when you're dealing with these select tools, or selection tools, there's a lot of times where you're going to do something and whatever, and then you maybe like lose track of some tiny little selection box. And so what you have to do is hit Control D to deselect. Or there's an entire selection menu, and you would say, deselect, and it would get rid of it. I mentioned the hotkey because you're going to be using it a lot. And you can tell by the fact that there's an entire selection menu that there's a lot to do with selections in a bitmap program. It's not just a matter of holding down shift and clicking on all the various pieces that you want. But I mentioned that the Marquee tool does have a couple of uses if you have a few individual objects you're trying to move that are on the same layer. The other one I would mention is I've said before that this image isn't quite, image size. It's not quite the right size. If I go to inches here, it's, there we go. It's 5:3. It should be 4:6 or some other, ratio, right? The horizontal to vertical is not quite correct for a photograph. So let's say you needed this to fit in a photographic frame. Well, up here in the properties for the Marquee tool, instead of normal style, you can say fixed ratio. And you can see I already have 4:6 in here already, right? It's technically 6:4 because they list the width first. But when I drag it like that, it constrains me to just the ratio of 6:4. Now, whether it's 6 inches or 6 pixels, it doesn't matter. It's a ratio. It's a certain height by a certain width. Those of you that deal with video have to deal with ratios all the time. Different TVs are different sizes, but they might all have the same ratio to them. And what this allows me to do is select the area that's the right ratio, and then I can hit image crop. And now this is the same ratio as a 4:6 photograph. We're going to undo because I don't actually need to do that. And also it looks like I shrunk something at some point, so we're going to undo until I fix that. There we go. The other one you have is fixed size. So if you are working with a web image and you need 64:64 pixels or 150 by 150 pixels for a There we go. For a thumbnail. Obviously, that's not working right here because it's the this is a very big picture, and 64 by 64 showing you that that's very small. But on the web, it can be kind of large. So one thing I might do for thumbnails for people putting stuff up on the web is that you can say 1:1, and it'll give you the square that you need for your thumbnail. And then you can always resize it later, especially if you have a lot of images. You can resize it later using batch action, which is something later down the road. But for those of you looking to, make thumbnails out of your photographs, this is not a bad way to do it. All right. There's also the elliptical marquee tool. Not often that I need to use this because it's not specific enough, right? Aside from trying to select a few items that are on the same layer but are separated, it doesn't help me very much because I'm trying to select maybe all of the blue or all of the cat or something like that. So next up is something called the Lasso Tool. And what it does is it follows your mouse. Now, I can kind of draw a general area around here to get rid of the cat. And then I could get rid of him. Or I could go to select inverse selection, it selects everything else, and I get rid of everything else. When to use this? Well, honestly, I mostly, in my experience, use it for what's called a garbage mat. And this froze. Hold, please. Glad that has a pause button. Okay, so what I use this for is mostly what is known as a garbage mat. So let's say you were trying to extract the cat and keep the cat and get rid of everything else. Well, given what bitmaps are like, this is a lot of real estate to try and get rid of. And really, your biggest concern is the edges of the cat, right? Everything else, you could technically go through here with, that's not an eraser. There's the eraser. There we go. I could technically go through here with an eraser and get rid of a lot of this. It's erasing to green because I forgot to separate my background. There we go. So what this does is it allows me to just kind of be like, all this other stuff out here. Whoops, see, that was bad. I went too close to his whiskers. You have to be careful with the garbage mat sometimes, especially if you're drawing it with a mouse that has a short cord. There we go. So, and then I inverse the selection and I hit delete. And now I have much less I have to worry about getting rid of, right? So that's where this comes in handy, is a garbage mat. But then, of course, we now have to worry about getting rid of the blue, but not getting rid of him. And again, it's hard to understand, but the computer does not understand the difference between the cat and the background. It's just pixels. It looks obvious to us, but not to the background. So there are a couple of tools here, quick selection and magic wand. I already know quick selection is not going to work too well here, but the quick selection does as much of the work for you as it can. So as I drag it, it's kind of guessing. And I got it wrong. So the good news is that it does the work for you. The bad news is that it guesses wrong a lot. So you would kind of do your initial selection, and then you could hit this negative version of it up here, so to add to subtract. And the subtraction, I guess, algorithm, the subtraction math is more subtle than the additive math. So in other words, it added these huge swaths of the cat's face that you're like, no, I don't want that. And then when you're subtracting it, it doesn't go back the other way too much. So that's how it works. It adds more than it maybe thinks it needs to, and then it'll start to subtract a little bit less. And whoops. So that's how that works. But you can see I can't control very much about it. It's kind of getting it. It's also freezing because I'm recording my screen. But I can't control its parameters very much. There's a refine edge tool in here. I'm probably going to break the whole thing. Um, but you would want to know a lot more about how these tools work, and there's other ways to get what we're looking for too. In underneath the same tool, if you click and hold, is the magic wand tool, and this we have a lot of options for that we can change. So this is how you will learn about all those different options that are in the what's it called? Sorry, quick select tool. So how this works is you set a tolerance. The higher the number, the more types of pixels it's going to select. So if I hit 80, bad example. There we go. Oh, see, actually, it's pretty smart. It'll take a lot of pixels. If I hit 10, come on, you can see it's taking a lot less. It's looking for whatever you selected, and then things next to it that are of a similar pixel quality. If you want it to be all of the pixels in the image that are the same, you can turn off continuous. I don't usually do that myself though, because let me see if I can find something. Yeah, I gotta turn the number up a little bit. Yeah, so what can happen is I can see, it's hard to see right now, but there is a piece of the eye selected. And that's because I have non-continuous turned on. So by clicking anywhere that's kind of bluish green over here, I end up selecting bluish green inside the eyes, and that's no good. But if I turn on continuous, it'll only select this, and then I come over here and I select this, and it leaves the middle alone, and you only have to worry about the edges and how they're working. They're working out kind of well. I'm kind of surprised, if I'm going to be totally honest. I almost expected this to break more than it is. But then I can hit delete, maybe kind of see what happens. And now this is the rub. What's going on with this cat in this photograph with the blanket is that you see these blue edges where you can still see the cat, but it's blue. And what happens is that blanket in front of him is out of focus because it's a very long lens, and so it's got a very narrow angle of a range of what it can keep in focus. And so as the blue blanket in front gets out of focus, you kind of see through things. You've done that before, right? Your hand's in front of your face, but you can see past your hand because you're focusing on something in a different direction. Camera lenses do the same thing, or this accomplish the same effect. And that means is that you're getting this blue in here. Now, depending on what you were doing, I mean, this is a little silly. I don't know why I need to get rid of this anyways. If I needed to replace his background, I would need to do a couple things. One is correct for the blue using image adjustments that we did last time. The other is have a better edge. This edge sucks. It's really super pixelated. Like, it's painfully obvious that I have digitally cut something out of the background. There we go. So I would want to have some sort of other edge to things. And that's where this tool, or I don't know, setup, work area, whatever you want to call it, edit mode, there we go, down here is. It's not the bottom one, it's the second to bottom one. It's a circle inside a square. When I do that, this happens. This is an edit mode that allows you to paint your selection as if it using paintbrushes and things like that. So while I did do an okay job of selecting as much blue as I wanted to, it didn't quite take care of everything. These edges, like I said, they suck. So now I can grab an eraser and make sure it's set to brush mode, right? Because I want to soften the edges of my selection. And a brush is, if I turn the hardness down a ways, that'll do it. And whoops. So if I come in here and there we go. I'm kind of overdoing it so you can see it on your screen. I actually want this to, there we go. So you can see that that edge is a lot more different, and I'm kind of over choking in just so we can see what the effect looks like. But you can see that line now between the red and the blue is not as sharp. And if I go back to regular edit mode and I hit delete, you can see that will blend in a little bit better. It's still not correct. It's still not awesome. But if I open up something, Nope, that's the cat again. I have to do this the hard way. There we go. If I take this and I drag it in here, and I drag it underneath the cat, you can see there's obviously this looks stupid because it's the wrong scale, but from a digital image perspective, look at these jaggedy edges compared to here, right? There is a little bit of blending in that's happening. It's not right, obviously. I'd have to still get rid of the blue and things like that, but it's less terrible. And those are the kinds of things you have to do. You have to go into this edit mode and use an eraser. And a lot of this is trial and error. No one scenario involves the same thing. For example, I know I need to turn the hardness of this brush like way down and I need to actually turn the size of the brush up because I'm trying to make the edges of the cat kind of semi-transparent so that whatever I was to put behind it, it would blend in a little bit better, right? There we go. So that's like a huge area of semi-transparency. And then if I bring in this, I should probably bring this in first so I don't have to keep undoing. Look at that. So obviously it's ridiculous that the cat is blending into the lake, but there's a lot of transparency there. And then I could just do a little bit of color correction instead of a lot. Huge difference in the way these two pictures are blending together versus this awfulness. And there's no one solution. It's always going to be different because you're always going to be dealing with different things. No, don't save that atrocity. So I can't say, oh, in this scenario, like you always do this because I don't know what the scenario is you're working with. I don't know, you're going to have to kind of learn the tools and figure out which ones work under what circumstances because every image is going to be different. For example, assignments 15, making selections template. Sorry about that. So this template has some instructions for you if you're not quite remembering how to use some of the tools. But what you have here are, it's one flat image. This is right here. All of these images are just on one layer. That's all you get. And they're all bitmapped. They're photographs, right? And they're kind of low res too. So please note that you're only going to get this so good. But what it's asking you to do is make one little face out of these vegetables. So cut them out to the best of your ability. Do yourself a favor, don't make them any bigger. Any pieces any bigger are going to just break down even further. But the idea here is that we want to separate individual pieces out and also learn how to manipulate them a little bit. So I happen to know from the experience of our class that the quick selection tool makes quick work, of the cantaloupe or whatever, lemon, whatever this is. I just had to click and drag for the tiniest bit and it was like, boom, there's your lemon. And so if I hit Control C to copy and Control V to paste, it pastes it in the exact same location. So if you then go to your Move tool, which is V on your keyboard, by the way, ta-da! Now, here's the thing. It didn't do the greatest job. You can see as I'm dragging this around, it's got a white outline. Lucky for us, our background is white. See, that's the cool thing. If you don't see it, it doesn't matter. So don't make fixes to things that don't matter. If you position something that has a white border on top of something that's white and we don't see it, then that's not cheating. That's not being lazy. That's just not doing unnecessary work. So I'm going to not ignore the fact that I'm on a white background and just leave well enough alone. I want the head to be vertical though. And this is a tool that we haven't used in here yet. What you're all looking for probably right now is a bounding box so you can rotate it. Edit, free transform. And you'll have the same Illustrator bounding box. If you hold down Shift, you'll get the different angles. You get a lot more of them though. You get 75, 60, 45. So I think that's 15 degrees. Yeah. Which is nice. And so I can turn it vertical, have the head like this. Now, because this is its own separate tool, the free transform tool, you have to enter in order to get out of it. Otherwise, the program will yell at you, won't let you switch layers. The good news is, if I'm in the free transform tool and like, oops, I do this, when you hit undo, oh, there we go. Oh, you can only go back one. That's changed. Well, I'll hit enter and undo entirely. You used to be able to step backwards through it. I must have a setting that's off, or they changed it. That's unfortunate. So move in small increments, I guess, would be the lesson, because undo will only get you back one move. All right. And now this is on its own layer. Whenever you copy and paste something in Photoshop, it creates a new layer. So I'm going to name that lemon, so that I know it's on its own layer. And then I have to go back to layer 1. You always have to go back to that layer in order to select any of these other things. All right, so now there's the bow tie. I'm going to try and look at the bow tie, and I'm going to, what am I using? Here we go. I already know this isn't going to work, but if you try clicking and dragging with this, you get that. And I can try using the minus tool, and like you can see, it's not finding that edge, because I'm not able to like really refine this enough to, whoop, wrong thing. Yeah, it's no good. So we found in class that the magic wand tool works really well, or works better anyways for this. So 50 is too high, I think. We're going to go back down to 32, which is the default. And nope. Whoop. There we go. Better. And if I hold down shift, I can start adding to the selection, right? Because if I have a smaller number, it's not going to take as many pixels. But then I can look for, like, see these darker pixels, and I can start to fill in the gaps. So I can go, if you really, where you cut the edge off kind of, depends on what you want. I want to get a little bit closer. There we go. That's a little bit more of the pasta. But I don't want to get too much of the shadow. Now, you can see that there's little bits left over, and you can try and hold down shift and click in the middle of them and, like, get them back. Or, this is another use for the quick edit in standard, or what's it called? Edit in mask mode. Let's make sure I say the right thing. Edit in quick mask mode. I was half right. And so I go to that, and then I grab my eraser tool, and I'm going to turn up the hardness, and I'm going to turn down the size. Like more. Remember, brushes can kind of sometimes expand out beyond that circle. And I can use this to finish finding those pixels that didn't get selected. It's a little tough if your image has any pink in it, because the mask is pink, and so is the shadow on this piece of pasta. But if I turn that off, and if you take a quick look, like a close look, you can kind of see that there's no dotted lines. So you have to learn how to go back and forth between these two tools and two edit modes. There we go. Right? You gotta like really kind of take a look at things. But now that I know it's okay, Control C, Control V. And now it matters. Remember, we're not going to be zoomed in that close. Excuse me. I think I may have accidentally... Yep. I accidentally did not have some of this selected. I wasn't paying attention. And you can see, if you put it over something dark, you can see that it had holes in it. Now, if I end up putting this over here, I can maybe kind of get away with it, but maybe not really. So I would probably redo that and just get rid of it. Or actually, you can step backwards, I think. Yep. So I can step backwards, and I can wonder what on earth is going on. Go back into quick mode. Go into erase. And just like, yeah, there they are. I can see them now. Make sure it's at 100% opacity if you're trying to really erase things. And just kind of have a do-over. So stepping backwards allows you to go back to even when you had things selected, so you don't really have to redo anything. And if I get out of this mode again, and I copy and I paste, that's better. See, I'm still missing stuff. So, such is life. Get out of here, zoom out. So, you can make whatever face you want. you don't have to use all of the pieces necessarily. I know a couple of these don't. But use a bunch of pieces, right? Like if you ask me, oh, is this enough? You know, that's not a good question to ask a teacher because you want to be doing the best you can, not aiming for the bare minimum. So just, make an interesting face, whatever crazy whacked out face you want. Doesn't have to be symmetrical, those other two are. But if you have any, if you're trying to remember what some of the tools are called, they've got some of the ideas here. All right, and then just save this, as a PSD and submit it later. It's not that big a file because it's, not that many pixels. So, all right.